Hey guys, this is Friday's video. We're going to talk about three things in this video. First off, the writing response 10, your final writing response, is due Monday, August 1st, as you can see on the syllabus here. The portal will open automatically. It's under exploratory writing, under coursework. So we're not under the discussions anymore. It's back to where you've posted most of your writing responses. It's due at 4 p.m. again on Monday, and here's your prompt for it already. Basically, I want you to start thinking about reflection and revision, because your final portfolio, as I've mentioned a couple of times, is due Friday, August 5th by 11:59 p.m. on eCampus, okay? This portfolio cannot be late. If it is late, you will get a 0, and that means you will fail the class. So do not let that happen to you. And the reason why it cannot be late is because grades are due so soon after, okay? So I got to have everyone's in so I can start grading them and get those grades in for your record. So the good news is you have a full week to really polish this final portfolio. You'll get feedback on your stakeholder paper from me over the weekend sometime, and then you can really start polishing things up. It's your chance to ask me questions. If you think that your rhetorical analysis is your weakest paper, then you should focus on it, ask me questions about it. And the writing response 10 is a way for you to start thinking about the final portfolio and what you actually need to polish up before you submit your big project for the end of the class. So this is the most persuasive piece. You're basically saying you've learned all these skills, you've applied all these skills, and here's the final product, why you should move to English 102, essentially. Okay, so the stakeholder paper, as I've mentioned before and as we've been working toward, is due today, Friday, July 29th, 11:59 p.m. on eCampus. It's under papers, under coursework, okay? So go to coursework, go to papers, stakeholder paper, and then there's the portal submission for that, just like the rhetorical analysis paper and the narrative paper. So that's the first thing for this video. The second thing is we're going to talk about introducer commas. I know, not the most exciting stuff, but most of you, I would say, out of the 14 people enrolled in this class, probably like 13 of you guys are having trouble with this. So it's enough to warrant a video. And I'm also going to talk about the third part is quotations. So a lot of you are still not quite using quotations correctly, and by that I mean quotation marks. So it's another grammar element. I've talked about integrating sources to death, so if you have questions about that, please ask me or look at one of the several videos I've already posted about integrating sources. All right, so for introducer commas, let's first talk about what they are, and then we'll look at some examples and fix them so that when you go back and polish your portfolios, I'm hoping that most of you will use some of these grammar videos probably that Friday or even Thursday. So these first 3 days should be used to fix big issues like structure or thesis statements, argument, citations, etc. Deal with those Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, maybe Thursday, and then the grammar should be a polishing element that you do on Friday, the very, very last thing that you do before you turn in your paper. All right, so first off, we have to review quickly these two phrases, independent clause and dependent clause. So this writing helpful sheet is something that I posted on eCampus a while ago. You can find it online. An independent clause has these three parts, a subject, a verb, and an object. And the object can also be substituted out for a complete thought. So although we don't agree, we still had a good conversation. That's an independent clause. It's a complete sentence. It is not a fragment. It is not a comma. There are no comma splices in it, no run-on sentences. It's like grammatically perfect, we'll say. All right, a dependent clause is missing a complete thought. So you have a subject and a verb, which makes it a clause, but it doesn't make sense saying it on its own. So these are often called fragments. If it's punctuated, it's a fragment. But the main thing to remember is it doesn't read as a complete thought. So although we don't agree, and then what? Like you are expecting a part of that sentence, another part of that sentence to come to make a complete thought. So if you read them out loud, which I've recommended to many of you on paper and through these videos, if you read them out loud, you will be able to hear these errors more easily than if you're just reading it silently, because obviously it doesn't make sense like in conversation. Okay, so now that we know what an independent clause is and a dependent clause, we can go to introducer commas. Okay, so by introducer commas, it's basically, there are four main types of commas. Introducer commas are the ones that come toward the beginning of sentences. All right, so there are two types. The first type is introducer commas follow introductory or transitional words and prepositional phrases. These could be therefore, however, so, in some, in addition to, on the other hand, etc. All right, so when you are writing your topic sentence, again, remember transitions. Think about in contrast to, and then in contrast to what, put the thing that you're contrasting, or you're comparing. After that, you have a comma. So basically, it's you have your transitional phrase or word, and then there's a breath. And commas normally signal breath, but there are rules for them. So you might have learned, like in grade school or elementary school, to just have a breath, put a comma wherever you take a breath, but that doesn't quite work for everybody, so there are actually rules. So after you have these phrases, put a comma, because they're separating the phrase or the word from the independent clause or the dependent clause in the sentence. Okay? I've done this for most of your writing responses. You probably haven't really paid attention to them because it's so small and you're focusing on bigger elements, but I recommend that last week you really do go back and you look through a lot of the grammatical changes that I've made in your writing responses, and I guarantee you that introducer commas is going to be a big issue for most of you, like passive and active voice, and like those citation issues that I've already pointed out. All right, the second way you can use introducer commas is they follow an introductory or transitional dependent clause. So a dependent clause, like we just reviewed, it contains, it's missing a complete thought. It has a subject and a verb, but it's missing a complete thought. So they normally start with words like although, because, since, due to. Those words, they're called subordinators, and they introduce a dependent clause for the most case. So if you have a dependent clause that precedes an independent clause, then you must have a comma after the dependent clause. This is not a reversal rule, and that means you can't, when you have an independent clause before a dependent clause, you do not need to put a comma in between those. So I'll write another example down here, or we'll do some, we'll work these sentences around to kind of show you what I mean. So I watch Adventure Time. I love Adventure Time, so these three sentences are based off of that show. Although Finn has a crush on Princess Bubblegum, Finn spends most of his time with his best friend Jake. Okay, so although is a subordinate clause, or subordinate word, then basically I've already outlined, made it easy for you guys, I've already outlined where the dependent clause stops and where the independent clause begins, but basically just take this dependent part, read it out loud. If it makes sense, then it is an independent clause. If it doesn't, then it's a dependent clause. So, although Finn has a crush on Princess Bubblegum, if we took out the word although, it would make sense as an independent clause, but we have the word although, so more information should come after this dependent clause. The more information makes up an independent clause and thus a correct sentence. So, Finn spends most of his time with his best friend Jake. So we have Finn, subject, spends, verb, and then what does he spend? Most of his time with his best friend Jake. So we need a comma to separate these two because the dependent clause comes first in the sentence. You also, if you read the whole sentence aloud, you actually take a breath there. So, although Finn has a crush on Princess Bubblegum, Finn spends most of his time with his best friend Jake. So there's a natural pause for breath there. Another example, even though the Ice King has captured Princess Bubblegum, Lumpy Space Princess, and Slime Princess, he still does not have a princess companion. So here, you can probably already tell, this is where the natural break is. This seems like a very like obvious thing or a concept that I shouldn't have to be going over, but I think it's just because you guys haven't gotten to the stages of proofreading that you need to be at, especially for the final portfolio. So just make sure that if I've written like introducer comma, or you see a lot of commas inserted in your writing from my feedback in your writing responses, then definitely take another look at it. The last example, because of the Great Mushroom War, Finn is the last human on the post-apocalyptic Earth. So where would you put the comma? If you said here, then you're correct. It's all three cases show the same thing. So a dependent clause and then an independent clause. Let's go ahead and change the order of this. So let's take our independent clause and put it to the front. Now let's read it. Finn is the last human on the post-apocalyptic Earth because of the Great Mushroom War. So there's less of a pause here, and you do not need a comma here. Actually, you should not put one there. That would be incorrect. So when it is reversed, again, when the independent clause comes first and the dependent clause is second, there is no comma here. If this were a coordinating conjunction plus a comma, that would be used to separate two independent clauses, like we've talked about in the comma splice in the run-on sentences video. But this is a little bit of a different case. All right, I know that's a quick introduction to introducer commas, but just make sure you go back and polish up your work, because I am seeing that in a lot of your sentences. Okay, for quotations. So the main thing with quotation marks and punctuation. Some of you have already asked about this. Good job. Thanks for the questions. Keep them coming. Periods and commas always go inside the quotation marks, okay? So always inside. And then colons and semicolons always go outside the quotation marks. And then question marks and exclamation points depend. The reason why those depend is it depends on the context that they're being used. So let's say that according to Ray Bradbury, and there's this huge quote by Bradbury, and then let's say Bradbury ends it with an exclamation point. Then that means it needs to be kept in the quotation mark because it's part of Bradbury's quote. If we added a period here, and you wanted it inside the quotation marks, like you don't have a page citation, you would add it in brackets. Remember, because if you add information that's not already included in the quote, you need to add it in brackets, even if it's punctuation. But ideally, you would have a citation here that has like the page number, according to Ray Bradbury, and then whatever page you found this information on, then your period would go outside and not on the inside, okay? But for this case, we'll just say that we got this online. So we've identified the author here, and then we don't have a page number since it's online and it's not a journal article. So then we just put the period here. All right. So this here is a little bit of a hot mess of a sentence. So the quotation mark would not, he wouldn't say 89. Jonathan Eller is, according to Jonathan Eller, blah, 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 that's the quote. Jonathan Eller, I highly doubt, said parentheses 89 parentheses, all right? That's the author or the student recording the citation. So we need to put the quotation mark here and then the period on the outside. Think of the period as it's like encompassing the whole sentence, okay? So your citation should never go after the period. The only exception is with block quotes, all right? And that's long quotations, and I've guided some of you toward the Purdue OWL webpage where you can just look up long quotations and they have explanations for that. Okay, let's see if we have any other. This one is completely correct. Bradbury said there's a comma here. You have the quotations, and then I'm assuming that there is no page number because there is first, no page number, and second, the period is inside the quotation marks. So again, commas and periods go inside quotation marks unless you have a citation like this, and then it would obviously go out here. And semicolons and colons go outside the quotation marks always. Exclamation points and question marks, it depends. So just keep writing, keep working on it, start polishing your papers, start going back and thinking what you need to polish. And we're going to start our final week next week.